Okay, shall we begin? So I've been assigned an hour and a half for the program summary, and I'm glad you're laughing because yes, there's no way I'm going to use an hour and a half. I figure maybe half an hour, maybe we'll see. But I have no plans to use that much time. But we did think it was worthwhile having some kind of bookend to the program, some kind of closure. And so I just want to give my impressions and some other related topics of the program. So, by the way, I nearly forgot. I must remind you that if there are any books that are still checked out, if you have a book from the IS libraries, be sure to return it before you leave. I'll have some other reminders as we go, but that was an important one. Make sure that you return any books back to the library before you leave. Okay, so I think before we begin, we need to recognize those that made this program possible. And first and foremost are the staff here at the IS, Susan Higgins, Michelle Sage, James Stevens, Prentice Brisball, and the rest of the IS computing staff, the School of Natural Sciences computing staff. Dario, our AV expert, who's done a great job. And by the way, he's going to be editing the videos of these lectures, and they're going to appear on the website. So watch for those. And Carla, an intern helping. Susan, could you come forward? Susan has done an outstanding job from the very beginning, from not only collecting and sorting all the applications, making sure everything was straight. Come on up. So Scott and I have got something for you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks. It just wouldn't have happened without all the help of all the staff here, and in particular Susan, so thank you. Next, I think I need to thank the lecturers listed here: Kevin Bowers, Bill Dorlin, Brian Kernighan, Mike Norman, Franz Pretorius, Derek Richardson, Anatoly Spikoski, Walker Springel, and Scott Tremaine. Some have come from quite a distance. Walker, for example, come from Garching. They've all dedicated 2 weeks of their time, of their valuable time, essentially for free. We got free lunches, I guess, but there is no such thing as a free lunch. So it was a lot of effort for all of the lecturers, and we're all very grateful for the effort they've put in. Most importantly, the best sign is that they stuck around for all the other lectures. They didn't just come, give a lecture, and then take off again. They were here and available to answer questions, and that was very important. I also, in particular, want to highlight Scott's contributions, because as the local organizer of this program, he did the lion's share of the work. Yes, I did help on a few small things, but by far and away, Scott has done the most effort, and this program would simply not have happened without his effort as well. So I think we owe a word of thanks to all the lecturers as well. There's another individual I think we should thank, Peter Toybin, who just out of his goodness of his heart volunteered to take on all of the technical aspects of the program. And that was very significant. It means putting together the install packages for all the different codes, and they are a very diverse set of codes, and they required a lot of different libraries, making sure they worked in all sorts of different platforms. And he's continuing to work by putting together a DVD containing all of the software and scripts that were donated. So that was a tremendous amount of work, and there's absolutely no doubt that this program has been much more successful thanks to Peter's help. Here he is, interacting with students, but that's the way I'll remember Peter. So thank you, Peter. And then finally, I think we should thank you, the participants, for coming. I mean, after all, you can't have a school without students. You took the initiative to apply. You took the time to come here. You've worked hard listening to the lectures, asking questions. That's the mark of a successful school. So just the facts, who are you? You are 115 registered participants, plus some local gate crashers from Princeton whom we welcomed, by the way. I mean, I was glad that people from the campus came, or people from the IS came. You were 100 graduate students, 13 postdocs, and 2 faculty. I may have more to say about that in a minute. 45 non-US participants from 14 countries. You were a diverse group of people. You had the chance to meet people from around the world as part of the school, and I hope you made some friendships and some connections that will last your career. So thank you all for coming. I guess we can all give ourselves a round of applause. So what was the program? The facts again, you had 32 hours of lectures. That's a fair bit. 10 hours of question and answer sessions, 6 hours of tutorials, 1 program dinner and 1 pool party, not to be forgotten, plus all those late nights, coffee shop runs, and everything else I saw going on in the Google groups. You've had a very busy 2 weeks. What we hoped you'd get out of all of this? Well, we hoped you'd learn something about how the numerical algorithms, which are at the heart of all of the state-of-the-art codes used in astrophysics today, actually work. And we hope you got that from this program. Our number 1 goal was to give you some insight into the numerical algorithms that are being used in codes. Not all the codes, but as many as we could cover in 2 weeks. We hoped you would get some practical aspects of computation, like best practices for software engineering and visualization. And it was good to see the special sessions that were organized in scripting and Viz and so on. We hope that you would learn something outside your own area, maybe something that's not being studied at your university, maybe a topic that was not regularly discussed in your research group meetings. And we hope that you'd meet other people and find out what they were working on, because networking like that is incredibly important in science. So overall, I'd say what we wanted for you to do was become numerically literate. That is, in the future, no matter what problem you're faced, we hope that you won't hesitate to adopt a numerical method to solve it, if it's appropriate. And moreover, you'll know where to start. You'll know what methods are most suited for the particular question you have. And I think it's very important that we try to make students more and more numerically literate, because it's such an important way to solve problems now and in the future. So that's what we'd hoped. I don't know whether we're successful. Time will tell, but that's what we hoped. So rather than trying to summarize, what every lecturer said, that would be really boring, I thought I would give you some of my very subjective impressions of each of the lecturers in terms of what I thought were quotable quotes. How to boil down each of the lectures sort of to one-liners. They're going to be presented in the order that the lecturers gave their lectures. So here's Mike 2 weeks ago, on Monday morning, just before his lecture, and the quote I took away from his talk was, "Where's the beef?" You're probably not old enough to remember that annoying commercial with the old grandma going, "Where's the beef?" But I do, and so it resonates with me. And what does he mean? Of course, he did a great job. I thought Mike did a wonderful job in setting us up and reminding us again, and always need to be reminded, that the whole point of doing computation is to learn some physics, to gain insight into the problem. And so at the end of the day, it's not about how big the code is or how fast it runs or how beautiful it is. It's about what did you learn from it? What problem did you solve? And so you need to always keep your eye on where is the insight coming from? How are you going to get the insight out of the problem? So thank you, Mike, for a great introductory lecture. Next up was Walker. And Walker gave a wonderful series of 5 lectures spanning a huge amount of topics. How could I boil all his lectures down into one? There were so many things I could have quoted. His last lecture on Arepo is such a great code. It's a really wonderful development you've done there, Walker. But the thing that stuck with me was we could run a simulation with 200 billion particles, but what would we do with the data? And it kind of reminds us all that there's a balance needed between the algorithms, the machines you're running it on, and the analysis. And if you can't look at your data, you're not going to get any insight. And often progress is limited not by so much the number of CPUs you have, but whether or not you can actually look at the data. And so you need a balanced approach when you're attacking these problems computationally. So thank you, Walker. That was great for coming and giving that great series of lectures. Brian Kernighan, you can't really argue with this quote: "Don't be too smart, don't be too stupid." I really liked his too smart example. How to load in the identity matrix. When you look at that code, I mean, that's way, way too smart. And on the other hand, setting individual array elements by hand one at a time, that seems a bit, that's not, as you said, computers are good at doing things, repetitive things quickly. So try to keep that in mind. Somebody will use your code in the future. You don't think somebody will, but somebody will. And so make it readable and try to follow these rules. I also liked his other quote. He had lots of wonderful sort of nuggets of advice. I liked his other definition, machine-independent code that will not run on any machine. We've all encountered that kind of code before. Scott told us about symplectic methods, and the quote that came to my mind was, minimizing the truncation error is not always the right thing to do. And why did that stick with me? Because it sort of demonstrates, for me at least, the difference between a numerical analysis and computational science. Because it's not always about finding the most accurate solution. The physics of the problem might set other constraints, which are much more important to satisfy than just simply reducing the truncation error. And the orbital dynamics problem is an absolutely excellent example of that. And so while a numerical analysis might view the equations as just an abstract mathematical system, and my only goal is to find the most, quote, accurate solution, the computational scientist sometimes has to worry about the physics of the problem. And Scott outlined for us how one does that with modern symplectic methods, and that was really great. Bill Dorland told us about the revolution that's coming through GPUs, and he's predicting a 20,000 speed up by 2010. And I think it's right. Whether or not it's going to be on GPUs or whether it's going to be on something like a GPU that the CPU manufacturers start putting on their chips themselves, we don't know, but I think that there is this kind of performance increase that we can all expect. Everyone keeps talking about the end of Moore's law. Well, I think the death of Moore's law is sort of greatly overrated. It seems to keep going. That is to say, the performance increases keep happening, not because they can make the circuit smaller, but they find other ways around it. They just add more floating point units or whatever else. So I think that for the moment, we can just continue to assume that computers are going to get faster for as long as we can look into the future. And so we should program and plan to do problems that way. Boy, we're going to do some wonderful things with machines that are 20,000 times faster than what they are today. And so think big, because inevitably, the things that you have available to you 5 years from now are way bigger than what you can do now. If you're limited by the machine now, you won't be in the future. It's just an inevitable part of computational science. Anatoly Spitkovsky told us about PIC methods and plasma physics and ab initio calculations of shock fronts. And another wonderful series of lecture, and the thing that stuck to me, I'm really paraphrasing him now. I'm not sure if he said these words, but the thing I paraphrased was that the problem he studies has been around a long time, but only recently has really significant progress been made. It struck me because the techniques he's describing, the PIC algorithms, really have been around for several decades. There's new implementations of them on parallel computers, and on the Roadrunner machine, on GPUs, and that's allowing these billion particle calculations that really do the problem, from the most fundamental level. He resolves everything, all scales. If you ask Anatoly, should I use SPH or should I use the grid methods for hydro, he answers, you should use PIC. You just go ahead and compute every single particle in the flow, and you'll get a shock front out of it, self-consistently from the ab initio. And I think that kind of thinking is needed. That kind of well, let's just do it brute force from the get-go because computers are fast enough to do it. We'll just do it ab initio, can lead to real insight, like Fermi acceleration and non-thermal particles and shocks. That's all coming out of those sort of ab initio calculations. Franz Pretorius gave a wonderful set of lectures on numerical relativity. There's no better poster child for the progress that's been made than the ability now to compute black hole mergers by crazy postdocs like Franz Pretorius, as Scott called him. And what's humbling is that only 2 out of about 100 algorithms turned out to be stable. But those 2 are great now. They're producing a lot of results. So if your code keeps breaking and you can't figure it out, it's because the problem's often hard. Sometimes you have to work really hard to find that algorithm that works and just keep at it and you will. And so here he is teaching me something And I'm obviously thrilled to learn it by this weird look on my face, I guess. Derek talked about rigid body dynamics. My quote I took from him was SPH was used for the dynamics of the rigid bodies. That might seem rather odd, but to me it struck me that I think of SPH as a method for fluid dynamics, and yet he's doing internal dynamics of so-called, quote, solid bodies. But it points out to the real flexibility of SPH, the power of SPH being able to do such a wide kinds of problems. And it sort of, to me, demonstrated novel thinking, doing things different ways, taking an algorithm that's being used in one domain and applying it in another, and being able to solve really interesting, hard problems that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And I think that's a lesson for us all to think about merging or migrating algorithms from one domain to another. I think there's no question there's way more unsolved problems than there are problems people are working on right now. And rather than being the 500th graduate student to work on the same problem, sometimes it's better to be the first graduate student working on some novel application in some novel domain. And so think about problems that you might be able to solve with modifications to existing methods that no one's tried to solve before. And I couldn't resist, I don't know if Derek's still here, but I couldn't resist. The other quote is, don't use global variables. You had to be at the Viz session to understand that quote, I think, maybe from Kerrod. Sorry, Derek. And full disclosure, I'm afraid a meeting prevented me from being at Kevin Bauer's talk. But the quote that I would want to take away from having seen the title and the abstract and so on, and knowing the work and knowing about the work, is that petaflops are here. Roadrunner is a petaflop machine. It's being used for calculations of a scale never imagined. Yes, it's difficult to program. Yes, it takes a lot of effort, but it's here. Now, petaflops have not migrated to the general user, but teraflops have. It's pretty easy for anybody nowadays to be running on a teraflop machine, and after, you got to keep reminding yourself of the pace of progress. A teraflop machine was, yesterday's petaflop. And so we're doing amazing stuff. Now they're talking about exaflops. That makes my head hurt. And exaflops is only a short way away. So when that happens, petaflops will be available to everybody. So this is just another demonstration of think big, because the machines are going to be really big. So that was my sort of brief summary of the lecturers. What did we not cover? Well, we didn't talk about applications in a lot of detail, but that was on purpose, because we wanted the school to be about computational methods and not a scientific conference where the results of calculations were presented. This was more about the meat and potatoes of how it's done rather than what you're going to learn from it all. The methods that were used in lots of different topics were not covered. The list that comes to my mind right away is stellar structure and evolution. One often gets asked, what good is computation? What problem has computation ever solved? Well, people forget that maybe the most important from the 50s is that one. That was all solved computationally. And the methods continue to develop, and now people are studying rapidly rotating three-dimensional stars and looking at mixing in interior and how it affects evolution. There's lots of interesting, difficult problems left in stellar evolution that computation are going to address. And I'm sure you can think of some more here. And this is not a complete list. There was lots of things we didn't cover. The one thing I really want to highlight that we didn't cover is data analysis and modeling, because modern astronomical detectors are all digital. They're generating gobs of data, and how you look at that data now is all driven by computational methods, statistical modeling methods, data modeling methods, data mining techniques. We didn't cover any of that. You could have a whole summer school on just that topic. We didn't think it was going to be very fruitful to cover two things poorly versus one thing well. So we chose to cover the sort of the theoretical computational efforts as opposed to the observational computational efforts. But clearly that will be worthwhile for a different summer school on just that topic alone. So to wrap it up, I thought I would show you some impressions. People have been uploading pictures to the Google Groups, and I've shamelessly stolen your pictures to show to all, just to give you a reminiscence of what's happened. We hope that you were listening carefully during the lectures. Now, if I was at a conference and I saw that, I'd be worried. I mean, everyone's checking their email and no one's listening. But I happen to know it's not as bad as the first impression is, because this was during Bill Dorland's talk on CUDA, and he had told you all to, oh, want to check out this website. So this is actually good. You were listening. You were checking out the CUDA website, I'm sure. No one's got email there. I'm absolutely sure. Yeah. We hope you had time to think about what was presented. Certainly the grounds here are conducive to deep thinking, Frisbee playing, whatever else comes to mind. We hope you took the opportunity to talk to people, ask questions. I'd particularly like to thank Alar Tumre for coming. It was really wonderful for his experience, expertise. He interacted with nearly everybody as far as I could tell, and he fulfilled Scott's promise of asking all the tough questions. It was great. Thank you, Alar, for coming. I mean, and the picture's not even staged. This is just the way it should be, where people are learning something from those with the knowledge. We hoped you worked hard and that you were challenged. We hope this wasn't too easy. It wasn't supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be hard. So I knew this program was off to a good start when in the first week you went into the astrophysics library and it was completely full. And you went to the physics library and it was completely full. And people were trying to find a place to sit and work. People didn't just go off and play Frisbee. They actually did the homework, as far as I could tell. And they did try to work extremely hard. And I hope after all that work, everyone had that eureka moment. That's what he was talking about. And finally figured out how it worked, even if it meant disturbing your neighbors when you finally had that eureka moment. So what happens now? Well, I will bore you with the practical matter. Just to remind you, return those library books. And secondly, make sure you move all your data from the machines, because you will not be able to access your accounts remotely. So if you've got any data, codes, or whatever, make sure you move them before you leave. And when you get back to your home institution, well, we hope you are carriers of information. We hope you infect your colleagues with the knowledge that you've gained here. We hope that you share what you've learned with your colleagues. Unfortunately, our space was limited. We had a lot more applications than we could accept. There are many students that we regretfully had to turn down. Some of them may be at your home institution. And so I hope you go back and tell them the things that you learned here. That would make this program successful. If you're still confused by some of what was presented, I hope you go back and take the time to read those method papers that flashed by in all the lectures. Read them carefully and see if you can figure out exactly what the people were talking about. Finish the homework and try to understand what was going on in the areas that are really relevant to you. Of course, we hope that you apply what you've learned. We hope we've done something useful here. And of course, in the long run, we want you all to go beyond what we're doing and what has been done. We want you all to be, in 5, 10 years from now, the ones up here giving the lectures, and what are the state-of-the-art methods that you've been developing. So, to summarize, have a safe travel home. Go forth and multiply to double precision, of course, because, as Peter told us, double precision is faster than single precision nowadays. And that's it. This is the end. So thank you all for coming.